welcome to Transparent Parenting. I am so excited to have these beautiful people on this panel with me. They are going to introduce themselves, and we will first start with Cedrick Garrett. Go ahead, take it away, sir.
For a nonprofit assisting homeless and at-risk youth. I've been working with children in education for 18 plus years. I have a bachelor's, my master's in urban education and community counseling.
You want to say something about your babies or no?
I have two kids, one 12-year-old and a little girl who's about to be 7 tomorrow.
That's exciting. Okay, thank you very much. Let's bring it on home there, Stephon, Staley, and your military background will be nice as well.
Stephon, Staley. I'm currently in trauma medicine. I've been in education for about 8 years. Soon to be transitioning to actually childhood education, pursuing a degree of forensic traumatology in hopes with that will actually help out with children in the urban areas, right? Because I know we have a need for that. I have 5 babies of my own. I'm 16 down to 5. My 5-year-old defeated me. No more.
It's gonna happen. You're gonna lose some battles, sir. We're not in charge. Let's be clear. We just are here to help them become their best selves. Get started. The general question that I have is, are you a transparent parent? I would like to say I'm transparent, but I'm probably too soft and my daughter manipulates me, but that's just my personal opinion because she's a little bit smarter than I thought she was going to be at 10. But I post that question, and if you guys can kind of answer that, and then we'll dive into the subtopics. So let's go with Stephon first.
I used to be a transparent parent. I started with my 16-year-old, and I thought that transparent parenting was the way to go completely. And so with my 16-year-old, I actually, I was open and with everything from bills all the way down to just everyday life tasks. And then I turned my daughter into a more mature adult than I am. Running through the house, she's telling me to turn off the lights. But then it stole her childhood at the exact same time. And so now that she's older, she's unable to do anything fun. It's turned into a battle of me trying to, force childhood on her, so that she doesn't suffer, as she pursues adulthood. But then I also noticed with my children, it's trying to find a balance like my other children. Trying to find that balance, not being transparent enough, you end up with rock heads. And then trying to find that balance. As you teach them, you end up learning more yourself, learning that you have to find balance because their responses are all unique. That's it for me.
Okay, go ahead, Cedrick.
For me, transparency, I start a lot of things with communication. So I talk to my kids all the time. My daughter, she's 6 now, she'll be 7 tomorrow. My son is 12. And so I've always talked to both of them. I've never put my hands on them as far as discipline-wise. I've always talked and had communication with them, open communication. So when I think about transparency, I'm thinking about talking about feelings, expectations, and just having open conversations with them about life, growing up, and what I expect.
I do have a question though. Do you think that transparency looks different when you have your daughter and when you have a son? I only have Charlotte, so I don't have a boy, but Cedrick has a daughter and Stephon has 2 girls and 3 boys. So is it different with the boys than it is with the girls?
I think it's based upon growth as well. Like when I first started out as a parent, I had no idea what I was doing. And I knew for a fact that, my general upbringing was not the way that I should portray information. And, trying to teach it to my daughter versus my son is, just facing facts. We like to joke and say that, girls mature faster, and seeing it firsthand, knowledge-based maturity is true. The way that information is received, I like to joke and say that, some people in leadership positions always like to say, oh, you can't lead that horse to water. I'm saying you're lacking in leadership, right? The horse may not want he doesn't want an apple. He doesn't want a carrot. You got to figure out what the horse wants in order to get the horse there. That's your sole job. You want the horse to get you somewhere, you have to train that horse and figure out what the horse takes. You know what? I'm sorry. And I got one more. I was literally at my daughter's cheer the other day, and I'm sitting here, I'm watching these 5-year-olds cheer, right? And they're in step. They're in uniform, and they're doing everything that they are supposed to do. And then all of a sudden I have a breakdown, and I'm like, those are not the exact same children who they are going to be with their parents when this is done. And, you know, a lot of the other parents laugh, and it's true, right? It's like trying to figure out how to be transparent with your child while guiding them, while teaching them what they love and understand and what they love. You know, like Cedrick said, you know, not laying his hands on his children, right? Being able to communicate is a big piece of transparency, right? Understanding your children. I'd like to tell a lot of people, like, I know what my children like. I even take interest in some of the things they like. Even though I don't understand what it is they like, I take interest in it, right? My daughter loves anime, and I be in anime books reading a book reverse confused.
Yeah.
That's so hard. It's challenging.
You know, being a parent, that's one of the things that you have to do, understanding, so that your child doesn't, like Marissa said, end up in something crazy out in this new social world, because, you know, kids like Tide Pods now.
Yeah, I would say raising a young man and a young lady is definitely different. I find myself having talked to my daughter now that I had with my son, and the verbiage is totally different. And the way she responds, her personality for my son is very different. My son is really shy. My daughter, she also does cheer and tumbling and gymnastics, and she is just a social butterfly. She is ready to talk and tell you what's going on. She's really into making her own videos on her iPad, so she records herself, and she's always doing all this stuff in the living room. But I would say, like you just said, communication. I do find myself doing everything they enjoy. My son is a gamer, so I find myself playing games with him on the PS5 or the iPad. My daughter's into LOL dolls and different stuff, so I'm downstairs playing with her and trying to find different ways that we can kind of like mesh and meet right in the middle. But I always make sure I incorporate some kind of talking point into everything we do. So we'll go from making a video to playing the games to playing on the iPad and making a video with my daughter to talking about what she should expect at school tomorrow, what he should expect at school at PE, because a lot of times in our recent conversations, his PE class has been where the sex stuff comes up and the body stuff comes up. So really, really interesting.
Cedrick, you thought about those matching pumps with that dress for that LOL doll, didn't you?
Sometimes I can make my own designs for the LOL dolls. Listen. Oh yeah.
We got the same thing here.
I have so many LOL dolls that we can get rid of, so I will donate them to your girls at any time, because Charlotte does not use them anymore, and I am happy about that because they're everywhere. Growing up, was transparency represented in your family? Like, was your parent transparent or your parents transparent with you? I'm gonna say my mom was not with me. I think she was more transparent with my siblings about the finances and what life looked like for them. But for me, I can't remember for real, but in thinking about just how we are right now, I think she just became transparent like 5 years ago. So she was very much, she kept a lot of her personal stuff to her. So I would never know if there was a struggle or how she handled the situation, because she didn't have those moments and conversations with me, which I probably would appreciate and probably not be in a lot of stuff that I was in growing up had she had those conversations. So that was what transparency looked like in my family. I'm gonna let you go, Cedrick, first.
Okay, I would start. I was raised by a single mother, and my mother was very transparent with me and my brother. She was in the military, so whenever she would discipline us with her hands or a belt, she would tell us why she was this way, because how she was raised in her childhood, and also because of her military background, she felt like she had to let us know how she was in control through her discipline. But also, she talked to us, so we grew up and there was a lot of domestic violence and things like that. So every time it would be an incident with her and a man, she would talk to us about what was going on, why it happened, why they would separate. And as stuff continued to happen, she would sit us down, whether it was with a black eye or a bloody nose, and she would talk to us about why this was happening and what we should do and how we, could deal with it. And when I talk to people about being a product of your environment, I attribute me not being a product of my environment to my mom having those open conversations in the moment not 2 weeks later when stuff has happened and we've seen it and we're on the stairs trying to figure out, oh my God, why did this happen? She talked to us as soon as it was done. And raising my own kids, that's why I always talk and have an open conversation when they do something wrong. It's not just like, you did that, go to your room. Like, you did it, let's talk about it. Why would you make that decision? This is why you should make that decision. Now you can go to your room and think about what we just talked about.
Level. Okay, go ahead, Stephon.
Short answer, no. And it was like, it's like always a curse. Like when you look back in my family, we made a joke the other day, and there are no grandfathers. My father has multiple children, and can't find any grandfathers, any male figures. So my father was he was like the one. He was the one that stuck around. He raised up his brothers and sisters. He dropped out of school in the 8th grade to be the patriarch of the standing family. And so he never learned transparency. He learned to do. That's his only job, was to do. And so he filled that role that many people during that time period, I feel like they were filling. And so while not obtaining any learning transparency, there was also no real emotion. Like, it was accepted to know that you are loved, that I love you, but there was nothing taught. And so while I was sitting here, I was thinking, as far as transparency goes, transparent parenting, I think we can't forget the emotional part of it as well. Emotional logic, just baseline logic. And I learned recently about being illogical as well, right? Illogical thoughts also bring growth. And during that time period, no one had any illogical thoughts. And those illogical thoughts would have been to think outside of the social norms in the box, and to grind a little bit harder for those around you. But the task was just to do. So to go to work, right? Pay the bills, take care, and then that was it. They had food, they had a house. What was there to complain about? And so that transparency was found outside of the house, on the streets before the lights came on. And so I like to tell a lot of parents, when you sit down and you think about your children go to school, you miss them for 8 hours a day. Yeah. But then you have to leave for work, get home. When you get home to your children, you have to bathe them, feed them, make sure they're washed. And you probably get throughout the whole day in 30 minutes to an hour with your child. So that's maybe 5 hours out of the week, that you get to spend with your child while you're busting your tail for work. And then on the weekend, you finally got to decide if you're going to have time for yourself, whatever thing that you have going on, or you're going to dedicate yourself to re-educating your child from everything that they learned throughout the week, and that's hard to have transparency. And it's not an excuse for, the past, but it's an understanding that times are changing. Like, people are learning how to parent for the first time ever. COVID taught people that they hate children, like it's a terrible thing, but a lot of people learn for the first time they were not transparent with their own children, nor were their parents transparent with them. People hate, the children, not children, but adults are out here hating the teachers and how they're trying to handle their children when they found out that their child is terrible. But that was long-winded. That's my little piece on it.
I was going to ask that question, because when I became a parent, I think I was working in education, so I kind of knew about transparency, positive parenting, like just making sure I developed Charlotte socially, emotionally. So it was easier for me, right? But I'm going to say, when I got out of high school and I was in college and I was thinking about parenting, or I would watch people parent their children, it would never be like early childhood educator. It would always be something like my mom raised me. Like, my mom was not transparent, but she was very affectionate. So love was through the house. She just didn't guide me in those conversations, or made me feel comfortable enough to have conversations about things that were going on in my life that I probably could have taken her advice from, right? Because my mom, if you guys all know me, my mom is me on 10. So like her level of sensitivity is like this, like she has none. So I 100% probably would not feel comfortable enough to tell her about something that was really important or emotional to me, because she would just be her normal self, which would hurt my feelings, right? And I'm way too sensitive for that. So I kept it to myself. And now with Charlotte, I think that I'm too sensitive for her. And she plays on that sometimes when she is trying to get her way, or she's become very sensitive too. And so we're trying to really navigate those feelings and emotions as she's going through this adolescent stage, and me being transparent with her. I think I'm over being transparent. I just really want to go ahead and put the hammer down because she's doing the most, right? Conversations is not working. She be looking at me like, so, okay. And then she'll go back and do the same thing. And I just kind of feel like, so what we got to do now? Because clearly it's not working, these conversations and this communication, Cedrick. She not getting it, or she playing me. So one of those is happening, right? She real affectionate though. She loves love. She loves being the center of attention, but she don't listen. What I'm supposed to do at that point? Like, how does that look for transparency? Do I say, I'm tired of you not listening, you hurt my feelings? Then it made me look like a sucker.
I think it's twofold.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 15-fold. That's why we're having this panel, because it's difficult and challenging.
No, I mean, like, you know, I think James Baldwin said it, that, you know, children will never listen to their elders, but they'll always imitate them. Right. And so while we're upset at our children, and you know, this is just my opinion, and while we're upset at our children for the way they're acting, that we never had as much access to information as they have, regardless if that information is correct. Okay. Right. But for us to try to portray something to them that their peer groups have already solidified as the law, right? We are now trying to circumvent that negativity, or, you know, whatever it is, to re-educate them to what we already know what life is. You know, trying to be transparent is hard when they already feel that they've already received transparency.
Yeah, Charlotte know how life is. She done lived this life before, y'all. She done been here. She know what she doing all the time at her 10-year-old self. And I tried to tell her, you don't know everything, but you know, we're working on that. So that leads us into the next question. I'm glad you mentioned about like the excess information. The other question I had was, Charlotte is starting to watch a lot of these family shows, and so I've tried to get her to watch all of the older ones that like I used to watch when I was growing up. What family TV show can you remember where transparency was like very prevalent in how they were raising their children? Like, what's your favorite one? I think I got a lot, but I'm going to say one that I like the most, but I'm going to say mine at the end. So I'm going to let Cedrick go first. Look at Clifton.
Okay.
Clifton, wait. It's really quick and sweet. Let him go.
Hey, you know, I'm going to start with Family Matters, man. For me, Family Matters
that one. That's
Laura
what I was thinking.
And Eddie, they always had these open conversations and talked about him being a boy and her being a girl. But then you throw in Steve, the neighbor, coming over all the time, and Waldo, and all these different people with different personalities, and all of them needed this different type of attention. You got the grandmother standing there, you got the aunt standing there with her son. So I mean, it's realistic. It was so blended, because growing up, we went through all of this stuff. Like when we grew up, I stayed with my grandparents. My aunt lived right next door to us in an apartment. So like me and my cousin punched holes in the wall so we could talk to each other through the walls, right? And we got disciplined for that. But Family Matters just always showed like what they would do and how you should handle it as a parent.
I'm with Family Matters. I think my favorite episode, kind of what Clarissa was saying, was the episode when Carl was actually talking to Eddie, because Eddie had been harassed by another one of the officers out and about, right? And currently right now in our culture, it's hard for parents to have those conversations because it is so prevalent now, right? And I like to argue with a lot of people. A lot of people say like, oh, this is crazy. I'm like, okay, so I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, right? When I left home, it was number 11th on the U.S. most dangerous cities. Jesus. This has already been prevalent. The access to information, the access to see what they are doing is what's increased. And so back then, Family Matters actually showed back then what you could do and what parents should do, and have those clear, open communications, kind of let them know like, hey, you know, you should have came to me first, right? And let me handle it. You know, and just how distraught Eddie was when he came in trying to explain to his father. And during that time period before, it was because there wasn't listening with the communication. So again, I think it was Family Matters as well. It was everything.
Yeah, I think Family Matters is my all-time favorite. Charlotte and I have started to watch that because she was watching Full House, and I was like, so what we not gonna do is watch Full House instead of watching Family Matters, where it's kind of the better dynamic for Black families. But we started watching it, in one episode I really remember. And what I appreciate about Family Matters is that they also showed what parenting looked like when they were together and when they were like not on the same track, and also how like Harriet would really be able to kind of support Carl in areas where he wasn't being conscious of what was going on, and she provided him with that, and he did the same for her. So I appreciate that aspect and what a solid Black family looks like. And so Charlotte and I have started watching that. And one of the shows that they have now that's on Netflix is Family Reunion, is actually like a 2022 version of Family Matters. Essentially, they moved back to Georgia to live with their mother and father. The kids are being raised in, and they really talk about all of the issues that their children are facing now, from the music they listen to social media to come into life, and the little girl starting her cycle, like just a lot of different things that are important to children now, but I don't think they're probably getting enough views for it because people don't think about it in that way. So they show transparency really, really well. Like it is, I think they are really transparent. And then Loretta Devine is like, why are you talking to them like that? Because she's real Southern and from Georgia and from the church. She's like, they don't need to know all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting to kind of see the dynamic and how they explain why they talk to their children, why they're communicating, why they have these open lines of communication, and why it's important. And as the seasons have progressed, they've become more, applicable and amiable to conversing with the children versus pulling out a switch or a belt like they did in the beginning. So I think that is very important. But Family Matters is all-time favorite, hands down. I watch it all the time. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do, since we already asked, were you transparent with your children, and you guys were very clear that you are. The last thing I need is 3 tips for being transparent with your child. They can be the same, or you guys can give me your own 3, and I'll just put them all together. Stephon.
I say 1 is external growth. I believe that as a parent, if you are not willing to look outside of yourself, right? Look outside of that moment, you can drown yourself in the emotion, right? Your child can do something that is so enraging, right? That it takes you out of your character, not to the point of striking, but the point of the way that you use your words. And we all know the words have power. And if you are if you are a very emotionally advanced person and intellectual, while being upset emotionally, you can damage that child even further, because even though you mean well, you're being cutthroat with your words to prove your point. So now that child is now no longer wants to talk to you, right? Because it hurts, right? And the person that they thought that they could talk to is not there, right? So, yeah.
Okay, Cedrick.
I would say communication is key, right? In everything. Be mindful of your child and their feelings. And finally, I would say have empathy, because our children nowadays are really sensitive, and communicating with your child, being mindful of your child, and finishing it with that piece of empathy can really make or break your relationship with your child, or any child. Because you talked about social media earlier, you talked about all the media, right? They go through, it's all about eliciting these feelings from them so they can want to feel wanted or liked. That's the world they live in now. So like them at home first. So when the world doesn't like them, it doesn't matter.
I got a question for Cedrick. Do you think that our children are sensitive, or that we learn sensitivity as males, and we are just knowing what it is, and so when our children portray it, it's different for us?
That's a good question. Don't be trying to take over my panel either, Stephon.
I would say as we're raising our children to understand themselves and be okay with the communication, when I said I never touch my children as far as discipline wise, I communicate with them. So my children understand words and they understand the meaning of words. And when my disappointment is given to them through communication, they'll start crying because they can understand through my tone and my words that I'm disappointed. Right? So I don't think they're sensitive because it's our fault. It's just our job to help them grow, and understanding your feelings is a part of growth.
Well, I think he asked, like, I think his question was, do you think that they're most sensitive because you know about sensitivity, you're in touch with your emotions, so you can kind of, you're able to communicate that with your children. So while your children probably, yeah, well, okay, we know that's your thing, sir. Like, I know that's your thing. It's going to be really big on your face when I do this video, communication. But I'm just saying, like, have you always been communicative though? Like, was that something that you learned, or like, have you always been able to communicate your emotions and teaching your children that?
Yes, I would say based off childhood traumas, I decided that I do not want to traumatize my kids, and I would much rather help and teach them. And for me, that starts with what? What's my word?
I'm not doing that with you.
Look, you know what? I think this year I learned about honesty this year too.
Oh.
Honesty and humility, right? Not for myself, but for my children, right? Because it's easy to be open, right? Being honest is completely separate than being open, right? Being open, you can tell them whatever, but you don't have to tell them the truth. Like my children have yet to know who their daddy used to be, right?
I mean, they should know that though, dude, because that's scary for a grown up.
But it's funny because one of the most dangerous things is not who I used to be, but who these kids want to be, right? And they're out here mimicking everything that they hear in the songs and all that jazz. And, you know, a lot of people think that censorship is bad, right? But if the children are trying to become something that they're not, when they run into someone, an environment where that is truly a lifestyle, you know, it's a dangerous thing. Like I tell my son all the time, I said, the lifestyle that you want to live, the lifestyle that you want to mimic. If I took you home right now, your cousins, your uncles, your nieces and nephews, not nieces and nephews, but it's not the same, right? It's you think that this is what you want to be. Your cousins are actually experiencing this right now. And my son started football. I supported all the way. I let him know that I supported all the way, and giving everything that, you know, we know a lot of people just don't get, like the support, the consistent follow through, things like that. And then my son, partially my fault, very spoiled, right? He thinks he's the best just because of everything that he has. He has all the little dumb knickknacks and things like that. He shows up with the armbands. He think because of all these accessories, he's Tom Brady or somebody like that, or Ocho Cinco.
Prime time.
Lord,
so you
not
look good,
Tom
you feel good.
Brady.
Right. And so then I pulled back, and the whole season my son did not show up. Right. I'm talking about $2,000 on a sponsorship program, everything. Right. And then again, I'm holding my tongue because I want to be supportive and let him through. Right. I'm just following through. And then I finally realized that, hey, did you show up to his practice? I'm like, well, no one shows up to practice. So I showed up to one practice. When I showed up to this practice, you know, he was doing whatever he's doing. He turned around, he looks at me, and all of a sudden he takes off, right? And so the coach comes over and says, you know, this is the first time he's ever put out at practice. I'm like, well, I got to come to every game. I got to come to practice in order for you to put out. Why do I have to come to practice in order for you to be great? And so I let him know how disappointed I was, right? So that without me being by your side, you're unable to have that initiative in order to push forward. And I was like, son, I'm going to meet you halfway. I've already spent $2,000 on getting you a NFL sponsorship. I was like, what I want you to do is, I said, these next 2 games, show me that it's worth it. Show me it's worth me coming here. What's the point of us coming here? You know, me and your mother coming here if you're not actually going to put out, right? You've been through 4 different positions. And, you know, just let them know the truth about his status in the team. And so, you know, he's talking about a full ride to Ohio State. And I sat back and I swallowed my own pride because I don't want to hurt my son as bad as I knew it was coming. I said, when they mentioned the top 3 players, is your name, is your number in those top 3. I said, son, I can't even think about you at district level. So let's go ahead and start at the school level. At the school level, you're in the top 3. My son immediately begins to cry, right? Because in that moment, all his shield and his shadow and everything was taken away by, you know, his dad. And that's my lesson. But then the exact after that, his next 2 games, which was the end of the season, he was amazing. Right? Put out, got hits. They were calling him. They changed his position multiple times across the field and everything like that. And so after the first game, he's crying. I'm like, hey, why'd you cry? And so, you know, he was like, I don't want to lose anymore. I don't want to lose anymore. And I, you know, being understanding of that. And I was like, well, and he's cussing out his teammates, you know, and I'm like, you don't have that authority yet. You don't have that authority to pick on those people yet. When you just showed up after the whole season, you don't have that power yet. You are just became an asset to this team. And it broke him down a little bit more. After that one, though, the next one, he pushed even harder. So that honesty, even though it can hurt a parent too, I think is essential.
Go ahead. What did you say, Cedrick?
Through his conversation with his sons of being honest and, you know, not wanting to tear him down, but being honest to build him up and show him that you see the greatness in him and how great he can be. But using the examples to tell him, we've done this for you, we've done this for you. So we already invested in you. And now I'm willing to meet you halfway, right? And seeing him cry and him understanding, oh man, you know, like they really got my back. Like that's the crying was really like, they're here for me. Like they want to see me do great. And the final piece is when those next games come up, what does he do? He shows out and takes care of business.
Thanks for wrapping that up for me, Stephon, Cedrick. I'm done. I have no more questions. I have nothing else to ask you. I do want you guys to, though, personally talk about your businesses that you do, because you guys all do something outside of your career that we want to promote on here as well, for helping me out for my small business. So I definitely want to make sure you guys get promoted as well in what you do.
I also dabble in the arts. I have my own photography business. And so you can find me online at photosbysed.com.
That's it? That's all you give me right now?
If you say you're going to link it, and once you see the site, it speaks for itself. It is amazing.
It is really good. I have been there. It is actually a pretty good website. Go ahead, Stephon.
I am into art as well. I recently got into the manipulation of picture and restoring people's that have lost their loved ones. Because when you look online, especially for the African American community, a lot of our brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles have all perished. So I've gotten into the point, pretty good at it actually, of taking photos of different time areas and combining them to give people those memories of their lost loved ones.
Thank you guys very much. I do appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, your stories, your authentic selves. That is why I asked you to do this with me, because in my personal relationships with you guys, I know that you guys are phenomenal parents, and I enjoy conversations with all of you about parenting. I have learned a lot of things from all of you. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to stop